Hi, this is the Same Kit Different Day podcast. I'm your host, Doug Melia, and I've got with me today Ian Grayson. Ian, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm doing really well. Cheers, Doug.
Excellent. Well, I know we've had interactions on LinkedIn and social media, and I know that you've got quite an extensive background, which allows you to comment really, and let me actually take note of what you're saying. So I wonder if you could help our listeners by just giving us a bit of background on what sort of, where did you used to work, and how did you sort of get into what you did?
Well, I sort of fell into. Um, I used to work in a print, and then got made redundant from that, and it was sort of, well, what do I do
Yeah.
now? And care work was probably the not the easiest thing to get into, but it was the most
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
And I started out in working with learning disabilities, with people with challenge
yes,
services, and in the days of moving people out of institutions into community care,
yeah,
um, and sort of dealing with probably the higher end of challenges.
yes,
Um, and there I had um, my first taste of what was in those days CNR
yes,
training, which was the old ministry style training, which involved a lot of pain response and it was by dealing with people, put it that
yeah,
way. Um, and from there, I moved on then into mental health,
yeah,
into forensic settings, where I did me nurse training, and then I went on to do a specialist degree in violence reduction, which was the first one that was run in the country at the time.
Oh, is that the Glamorgan
Uh,
University one?
that was the
Yes.
one. Yep, yeah, it was in the first cohort to get through that. Um, and that put me in a position where I could really approach my trust. It was my trust used to have a core of trainers from different areas of the
Yeah.
trust that that did part-time teaching,
Yeah.
and some were better than others, some were mediocre. Um, but then the trust decided to look at trying to standardise things
Yeah.
across the areas, because there was too much of people putting their own,
Signature.
if you like,
Yeah.
their own areas into the training, rather than, because training people as part of an
Yeah.
induction, um, and certain things were more important to certain areas than others.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a consistent sort of line of where to go with everything.
No.
Um, so they put it out to get a PMVA lead nurse into
Yeah.
post, which I went for and was successful. And that gave me the opportunity then to have a look at the training that the trust did.
Yeah.
And I realised that we covered quite a large expanse of disciplines,
Yes.
right from the forensic services through to dementia care, learning disability, all those sort of like a low secure, the general mental health wards,
Yeah.
and each of them had needs, if you like. And I realised that one glove wouldn't fit all. So in developing this, I developed sort of like the core training that will be like an induction that everybody got, so when they hit the walls they could at least be useful if things went a bit pear-shaped.
Useful and not a danger, I suppose.
Yeah, because certainly when I started in forensics, although I've been trained in control and restraint, and we're still in them days using the old ministry techniques, it was about 2 months before I actually officially received training from trust.
Yes.
To be able to do restraint, so that became quite frustrating, and plus it put us in situations where you had to be extricated from that situation because you weren't allowed to do what you would have done naturally if you get me.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. You didn't know what the prescribed techniques they wanted were, so they sort of saw it as, oh, you've not had the training. The old thing I've heard is you're not insured, you've not had the training, so they sort of bundled you out. When maybe your approach might have been better than what's actually been put in place.
That's very true, and so when I was away. Doing my nurse training, they actually changed the whole system.
Yes.
There's only certain ways you can hold an arm, or certain ways you can hold a leg, and so every system is pretty much a muchness.
If we go back to Okinawa and we look at the samurai and the farmers and things like that, well, they first started using farming tools as weapons, and they decided which way arms should go and which way they should block. Not an awful lot's changed, as in ergonomics and which way you can move your arm. Now, there's a lot of training providers out there that would make you think that's not the case by making training quite complicated and having it over a matter of weeks and every possible outcome. But I agree with you. At the end of the day, it's motor skills, isn't it?
It is, and it's trying to actually balance out the retention of those skills. When I first took up the lead role within the trust, in every course, be it an induction course or a refresher course, every technique in the book was taught.
Yes.
Which meant that you probably spent I'd guess sort of 5 to 10 minutes on each technique, which you've got no hope of retaining.
No.
People would finish a course and say, "Oh yeah, it was wonderful," and walk out the door and not remember a thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I found that when I took over the role, I approached all the different directorates and said, "Look, what do you require?"
Yes.
There were some contradictions in terms in the fact that you had acute and elderly within the same building,
right.
And obviously you would expect people from different and an incident.
Yes.
So potentially you had staff that were working elderly would attend an acute ward.
Yeah.
So you had to have a certain blend of techniques within the core of what you were teaching. But I managed to start to separate out so that the elderly staff was for the group of staff, and the acute staff knew what was needed. Acute sort of areas, and then if there was a case of staff having to go and attend somewhere else, they then become a backup to the staff that are actually on the ward rather than going in and taking over. So if somebody got halfway through a restraint and got hurt, there was somebody to take over that role.
Yeah.
But the lead would be from the wall.
That makes sense. Rather than having someone come in and steal your thunder. One of the directions from the memorandum of understanding, I can never say that, between the Met Police and psychiatric units, they say, we don't want to have to come in and take over and do police stuff. We don't want to have to come in and take control of restraints. We want you to be able to do it. And like you say, if you can have that person that's still in charge without some kind of response team coming, surely that's got to be a more holistic approach.
Yeah, I mean certainly when I was doing my nurse training, I spent some time at Bethlehem Hospital.
Oh wow!
Working on the crikey, what was it called now? It was oh blimey, I still remember this. No, it slipped my mind, but basically it was a self-harm unit.
Right.
But within the actual Bethlehem Hospital, they had response teams that were made up of like one person from each ward on each shift would take that on as their role should an alarm be sounded. And I did follow the response team for a while I was there, because that was my elective placement, my longest placement, so I had plenty of time to play around with lots of different areas. And I found that sort of people were attending different wards, getting there, and they'd have to travel so blooming far
You're exhausted.
that they had to have a recovery period before anything happened to start off with.
Yeah,
because it was so spread out.
I always notice police officers as well. If you think about some of the response vans, you've got 10 guys shoulder to shoulder, full of testosterone, talking about guy stuff all day, and then they open the doors. It's almost like a wasp under a jar in some circumstances. You've got them in such a hot situation, it's cramped up. Maybe they got the fear of sort of what's going on or what the media's feeding them. So when they get out of that, you can't tell me they're going to get out and calmly de-escalate something. There's plenty of police officers that can, but it's just almost that shoving everyone in and saying, deal with this, try and come out of this and be a reasonable human being. It can be difficult when you've had to rush somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, we used to find it in the forensic settings. So when I was working on the wards there, I mean, it was usually teams from my ward. It didn't matter what other ward called for the assistance. It was teams from my ward that ended up taking the lead role in the restraints. And it took a long time for me to work out that it wasn't the fact that the wards themselves didn't have staff that could do a restraint. It's the fact that our ward probably had the greatest experience amongst us all.
Yeah.
So, our whole team perspective, anyone from our ward who attended, if we had a full team, we knew how each other worked and how to go in, try to calm things down. If it didn't calm down, then we knew which level to go to and where to move on from.
Yeah.
And quite often you turn around and as I had on one occasion, which was quite a comical, into a comical restraint. It didn't start out as one. Of one young lad that that we attended the ward, we ended up with a bloke on the floor, bit sort of under full restraint.
Yes.
And me as a lead turned around to him and said, "What's your name?" And he told me where to F off to. I looked around for any other staff on the ward, and there weren't any.
No.
They were all in the office, like in the goldfish bowl.
Right.
So I thought, well, crikey, I've got to discern who's doing what and why and who I'm talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So just over the top of my head, I called him Ethel. And Ethel became part of my repertoire of when I was teaching, sort of like, because you might have had two people teaching, but you needed three people.
Yes.
So this Phantom Ethel, who was my 98-year-old granny, but that's all beside the point. But I called him Ethel throughout the restraint, and I said, well, if you're not going to give me your name, I'm going to call you Ethel. At least then you know I'm talking to you. I mean, I could have called him anything, I suppose, but that's what hit me head at the time.
At the moment in time, yeah.
And in talking to him, explaining to him exactly what was happening, why it was happening, and what was going to happen next, we slowed the whole situation down. Yeah. And yes, when we got him moving, he was still in a state of mind that you couldn't have left him in the general population. So he had to go into the seclusion room. Yeah. We got him into the seclusion room on the mattress designed for seclusion, all that. And all of a sudden, people rushed in the room and started putting his shoes and goodness knows what else. And I just literally took my voice, just bellowed at them to go and see somebody else, so to speak. And said, look, Ethel's going to do it all for us. So I said to this bloke, and I said, Ethel, do you mind kicking his shoes off? And he kicked his shoes off. And I said, look, we need to search you. We need to make sure that you haven't got anything on you that you can harm yourself or harm us with or anything else. Do you mind just rolling on the side slightly so we can feel we're going away from you for obvious reasons? Blah. And this bloke did everything that I asked him to. And he ended up a lot of fun to leave, taking over the arms, figure 4 leg holds as it was in them days. And as I went to leave, just before we got up, the bloke turned around and he said, by the way, my name's John. or my name's Paul, or whatever his name was at the time. And I went, thanks. And obviously the door slammed. Now I sort of saw him a few days later after he'd had time to work everything out and calm down and all that. And he sort of said, look, that was probably not the nicest experience of his life. But if he was ever to be that much out of control again, he'd hope that he'd have somebody like me to work him through it.
Yeah.
Which this is, I mean, it's sort of one of those times where I punch the air and go, yeah, I've got something done because you're being professional. And but it was nice to have that recognition that you could take somebody through something very, very unpleasant and he recognises that you did the nicest thing you could under the circumstances for him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that was blinding. But I think I digress from where we were going with the overall trust strategy.
I think the importance of having somebody in control on a response team is paramount. And I think, as you said there, at any point we should be looking to give some control back to the person, because otherwise you're going to end up with someone in a 4 or 5 person restraint. Because when we shut the door of a seclusion room, there's nothing to stop people self-harming. So if they want to make a point and they're unwell enough, you can end up holding them for hours, if not days on end. And for me, as a supplier of soft restraint equipment, that's where I don't see our kit being used. And that's where I'm really against mechanical restraints. I think, well, why are you needing to hold this person down? Is it because someone's not chatted to, use a bit of humour, have a chat to them and see if there's a point where they can de-escalate, or even, like with the searching, you gave him a level, all right, he's being forcibly searched, but you gave him the consensual option, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean that's the most important thing. The best tool you got in your toolbox is your mouth at the end of the day, and being able to stand in command, or not in command, but in control. That is the key to most of it. I mean, you can have all sorts of thoughts running around your head, and you're probably sort of like building a brick wall behind you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But if you sound like you're in control, then you're more likely to get some sort of cooperation.
Yeah.
From the person. I mean, I had another restraint where a bloke was brought over to a seclusion room that had never been breached. 4 years, I think it was. And he managed to take out the reinforced glass of the door, which, in his state of mind, we didn't want him leaving that particular area. No. So, although we cleared the corridor of people that he could fire off against, he'd retained some of the glass, so he was unapproachable from our point of view. And so we did have to call in the police to try and sort of disarm him and move him out of that area, take him to somewhere else that was more secure.
And the police are quite clear about that. We get asked to do training quite a lot, and I remember people have contacted us and said, we need to have some training for knife defences. I've said, why? They said, well, the places where our people are going, they're likely they might get stabbed. Well, the simple answer to that is stop sending them. If the police are going, they wouldn't just have a stab-proof vest on. They'd have the correct measures to have to deal with it. And I think that's another one where training providers try and find answers to everything. Well, some things we don't need people learning disarming techniques. We don't need people. One of the things I was asked to do recently was comment on a lone worker policy. Sorry, a lone wolf, a lone shooter policy for an organisation we work with, and they said, if somebody comes in and they're a terrorist and they're armed, we're going to select a team of people to go and take the weapon off them. Well, there's no place for that in health and safety risk assessment at all. It should really be about getting yourself safe and then calling the professionals in, as in the police. Exactly.
I mean, so like, there's been so much research done around knives, into knives, and there was a lot of work done in America, and it was like an armed copper against a man with a knife. And in 9 out of 10 cases, the knife won.
Yeah.
And that's over about a 20-foot distance. So you sort of think of the bloke with a knife closing that distance before the cop can actually get his gun out to shoot the bloke. And in 9 out of 10, the copper would have been the one that had died.
Yeah.
So it's sort of something that you don't mess with unless you really know what you're dealing with. And yes, the police turned up, and they turned up all tooled up, body armour and shields and everything else. But the person that actually took the lead was a little tiny woman. I mean, she was shorter than anybody I've ever seen in a police uniform. I mean, I was surprised they had one small enough for her, really. But she literally walked up and she used her mouth.
Yeah.
She told the bloke exactly what she wanted him to do, which was discard the weapons.
Yeah.
Any weapons that he concealed under the mattress or anywhere else. Get them out in the open so that they knew where they were.
Yeah.
Any weapons he had on his person, get them out so they knew where they were.
Yeah.
Lay down on the mattress. Lay face down on the mattress. Put your arm behind you. Blah, blah, blah. And at that point was the time when they opened the door and they went into the room. But they got him to do all the work.
That's it.
In effect.
Yeah. Tactical communication.
Yeah, and you do feel a bit of a plonker sort of saying, well, blimey, we could have done that at a certain point. But I wouldn't have approached somebody unless I had the kit to protect myself.
That's right.
Which I didn't. I mean, I was looking at this bloke that was practically halfway out the seclusion room at times, thinking, God, if he comes out, the only thing I can do is actually take him down to the floor, which is going to be one hell of a drop for him.
Yeah.
And I don't know who's going to come out of it alive, so to speak. But after that incident, in the debrief, staff sort of turned around and said, look, I don't know how you stayed so calm under the circumstances.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, well, I'm sorry, I didn't feel calm at all. And in fact, I'm sort of like a gibbering wreck at the moment. Because I've stood there for half hour fending this bloke back into the room and stopping him from cutting himself or launching through the window and trying to do damage to others. But again, it's a persona you put on. It's an act. Being an instructor, unfortunately, if you do respond to alarms or anything, you end up taking the role.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Everybody looks at you and goes, you know what you're doing. And so like half the time you go, I ain't got a blooming clue to tell you the truth. I mean, sort of, I know the techniques and I know probably more techniques than most people here, but I'm not necessarily the best one to take over this situation.
No.
I'll sooner stand back and watch you because you know this person.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And I'd sooner commentate on the situation and in the debrief go through and say why you did well or what you could have done better, rather than saying it's sort of like it's looking at the situation and saying, well, okay, rather than saying, because if you tell people you've done something wrong, that's the point when people freeze.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's something that when I took up the lead in teaching, I mean, it's something I learned from teaching martial arts, was you never say people did something wrong. No. They did it different.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a different way of doing it, so let's try the different way of doing it. And it gets over that, oh God, I've got to get everything 100% right. Because in a hectic situation, nothing goes right.
No.
9 times out of 10, nothing goes, as the book says, as every diagram you could ever draw. It's not going to go that way. You're going to get somebody with holding one arm up and one arm down, and somebody behind, and until you actually get like a formal control,
Yeah.
it is sort of like we apply it by ear almost.
Yeah.
To a certain point, and you train and train and train and train to get it right, but you can't counter for staff, you can't counter for what is actually going to be presented at that particular time.
No. So how do you mentioned before about standardization of techniques? That's, back when you were teaching, is that something that happened? Was the standardized techniques across the different sectors, or was there still a bit of a discussion around it?
When I took over, it was everybody got taught everything under the sun. When I took over, then I started actually looking at what each area actually needed.
Yeah.
So it's stripping away all those techniques that were not used. Why teach something that you're never going to use?
That's right.
It's just something else to remember. It's something else to confuse another technique. It's a bit like the forensic would generally use, because of the level of threat they were facing, would use quite a high level of response.
Yeah.
I teach all the really soft stuff and make the emphasis on the soft stuff when you know full well they're going to actually go in and have to take firm control. The soft stuff, then you take from the point of view of, this is your de-escalating down to that one then.
Yeah.
Rather than, as it was taught, was you start at this level and then you build up. And it was sort of something I could never quite get in my head, as like how you could approach somebody softly when you'd already read the situation of this is not clever.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think when people say there's like bronze, silver, or gold, or level 1, level 2, level 3 restraints, and I've had some people say to me, we've done level 1, and I think, well, what have you done a risk assessment to say what you're actually facing? Because not only have you got the level of risk, you've also got the ability of the staff to take into consideration, because it might work well for sort of I'm 6 foot odd, might work well for me doing the low level stuff, but might the smaller people either need to make say to themselves, look, I need to get out of this situation and put somebody else in there, or I need to learn more restrictive holds simply because of my size, stature, strength, and ability.
Yeah, very much so, and it is, and it, where we used to, I used to do my tutor update, training at the, crikey, what was that place called now? God, my memory, unfortunately, isn't what it used to be.
That's all right. We're all in the same boat.
I've got big holes in mine, unfortunately. But it was East London Clinic or something. It was part of Partnership in Care.
Oh right, yeah.
And what they found over a period of time was that all their sort of retiring, getting on staff, bit broken down, a bit of a dodgy knee here and a bit of arthritis there, they'd all migrated over to like the elderly section.
Yes. And
they had all the young bucks in the forensic section.
Okay.
And they found that the level of response and the amount of aggression that was turning up was actually increasing.
Right.
And that's because they had a lot of, well, again, you're going back to the testosterone and all that.
Yeah, you've got a lot of people that are physically able, but perhaps the best minds for de-escalation are now in the other unit. I see what you mean.
Exactly. And I actually made a conscious effort of mixing and matching.
Yes.
And swapping people around and sort of saying, look, sorry, but you're going back down to the more dodgy areas because you've got these skills.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all the problems they were starting to have sort of they didn't totally go away because that's the nature of the business. But they were handled at a lower level. They were people that could actually talk their way through the situation as opposed to have to go running in and jumping on people.
Yeah, go in and call them Ethel rather than go in and jump on them.
Yeah. Ethel was my godsend sort of when I was teaching, sort of thing. Apart from one situation of teaching when somebody said they couldn't see what Ethel was doing. and it was sort of like, but Ethel's imaginary. You won't see what she's doing because she doesn't exist.
Oh, you can't account for those people in your courses.
Yeah, you start wondering, sort of like, as a patient crept in amongst the staff that are doing training, sort of thing, because it's sort of like, sort of, I've already explained this as an imaginary person, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But Ethel comes to hand quite a few times.
Well, that's good.
And so when I had the person we recruited that, I mean, he's actually gone on to big things, to actually sort of be my second in command, so to speak. I was quite protective of Ethel, and I sort of said, no, you've got to get your own
alter ego.
Yeah. Exactly, get your own imaginary friend. Me also Bruno, who was related to Harvey. You've heard of Harvey, haven't you?
Yes.
He's a big white rabbit sort of thing. Well, Bruno was a ugly looking sort of dog-eared rabbit sort of thing.
Kind of his nemesis. Harvey's nemesis.
Huh?
Like Harvey's nemesis.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't so much a nemesis. He was a bit of a thick sort of like, more like Lenny out of Mice and Men sort of thing. All the brawn and none of the brains. And but these characters all come into different situations when teaching and sort of trying to explain, rather than just sort of saying, look, we've got somebody here and somebody there, in putting a name on that somebody that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
It gave people a reference to visualise who should be there, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, it made sense to me at the time, and it seemed to make sense to the people that we were teaching.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I recently attended a conference, and there's a guy at the conference who was he was from a similar background as myself, and he was sort of talking about how he had got stuck into this this trap of teaching physical techniques and teaching restraint, and he's now sort of looking at the restraint reduction, and he's sort of saying that it should be taught as one thing, and I do agree with that. I think the old way it used to be done, where you've got one day of the conflict res, the de-escalation, and you've got the other days of physical skills, the more you can embed that into role play scenarios, give people names, give people identities, and have it where it's not always about
Yeah.
the end game is getting them face down and cuffed or face down in seclusion with a room exit. It might be a much better way of approaching the training rather than having people leave, because it tends to be they leave and the last thing they've done is the breakaway or the restraint or the high end stuff, and that's what they take onto the ward with them.
Yeah, very much. And it's teaching in a naturalistic way.
Yes.
I mean, again, before I took on the lead role, everything was taught in a prescribed manner. So if you had to do a, I don't know, take an arm from the front, but in an overarm grab, then you had to do it that way.
Yeah, dependent of your size, stature, experience. Yeah, it was just one size fits all, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if a person on the other side got it the other way round, underarm, well, it's still the same technique, basically, that you're going to move through to. So does it matter?
Exactly.
If somebody naturally grabs somebody a certain way and they will automatically react that way, and unless it's particularly dangerous sort of thing. I mean, I've come across people that were sort of very much trained in the martial arts sort of style, and I mean, sort of like their natural reaction would probably sort of do some real damage if they carried on that way. And it was a case of sort of like, look, no, we have to change the response under these circumstances, because we're not out there fighting people on the street. We're actually caring for people.
Yes.
So some people had to be pulled back. There are other people that had never ever in their whole life had a fight, faced any aggression, had a good hiding or anything in their life, and they didn't have a clue what the hell they were walking into.
No.
So teaching things in a prescribed way didn't make sense. You had to teach it as naturalistically. One, so the reactions were natural, and two, that they actually understood what they were getting involved with.
See, that brings me to another question, because there's some trainers will shy away from pressure testing. So they'll shy away from getting people in, getting a scenario set up. Right, one of the trainers is going to play an aggressive person, someone that's exhibiting behaviour that's challenging. We're going to go in, you're going to restrain them. Now, I know some people just don't do that. What's your view on pressure testing? Do you think it's got a valid place? Can effective training take part without pressure testing?
No, I think if you're doing a like an update course where you're more looking at are people retaining technique and things, then yes, to a certain point, because there's other experience that people have had on the wards and actually in practice that where they know what the situations are. But if they're new to the service, wet behind the ears, never ever set foot on a ward in their life, you have to show them that. I mean, it's the same as when I started out in care. I had this vision of helping somebody. The little kid gets to the top of the hill and he turns around and says, "Oh, thank you very much. I'd never have done this without you," and all that. And first day on the job, I walked on a ward and thought, "What the heck have I done?" Sort of thing. Can I go back to the job centre and get my cards back? Sort of thing. It was horrendously terrifying.
Right.
I mean, that was in a place called Grove Park, in South East London, which is one of the old hospitals. It's no longer in existence anymore. But there were people running around hitting patients, hitting staff. There's others that are trying to bite people. It was just like I just stood there and I didn't know how to respond to any of it because I'd never been in that situation. I'd never had to deal with that sort of situation.
No.
And there are other people from the intake of staff that I was with that were very easy, that went, "Oh, don't do that. That's not very nice," and spoke to the patients. All the patients were non-verbal,
Right.
but they did respond to tone of voice, and they obviously had a certain amount of understanding of language used towards them because they responded to it.
Yeah.
But me being green and wet behind the ears. I mean, this is why I knew when I took up the lead role how other people felt.
Yeah, because you've been there from square one. Yeah.
Exactly, and so like you have to show people that yes, we're there to be nice. Yes, we're there to be caring and understanding and everything else, and we will take you through all the scenarios and the theory and everything involved with it, because I never did this is your theory sessions and this is your physical sessions.
No.
I always mixed and matched.
Yeah.
So that you had the theory that went with the physical, if you get what I mean.
And fits with everyone's different learning styles as well. Yeah. So it's open, it's accessible to everyone, and it's not just chalk and talk for one day and then exhausted in a gym or battered and bruised the next.
Exactly, and it broke up things, and so like, and when you spoke about deaths in custody and PA and things like that, it was relevant to what you were teaching.
Yes.
When you said so like, well, there's this area, this triangle in effect across the back, where nobody under any circumstances puts any pressure, not inward leaning, not hands, not anything. Nobody from outside coming in going, "Oh, I'll just help you by pushing the person down." You tell them where to go and bugger off.
And that's really interesting.
It was all right
because the prone position, the face down position you describe, has almost been demonized, and I speak about this on nearly every podcast, to be honest. But it's more the pressure and weight applied to the back, isn't it? It's principles like that. Rather than fear-mongering over a certain position, if we got people to understand the anatomy better and, like you say, have some absolutes, this is what you absolutely mustn't do, then we can work around it more easily.
Well, you say about Tony Bleakman. Yes. I mean, I've heard him talk a few times, and one of the things he pointed out was, and I can't remember the figures, but if you put somebody in a standing position under restraint, bent forward, I think it's something like a 25% reduction in the ability to breathe.
Yeah, I think it was John Park's research from Coventry University, but I know Tony cited it at a conference I was at recently, and you're right, they looked at seated restraint positions and people leading forwards, and one of the things they actually said was there was a couple of people, well, there was one female in particular who said, I'm not doing it. She got into the position and said, feels wrong. It just feels wrong, and it's that, like you say, it's that bent forwards pressure on the diaphragm, especially with people's body compositions interfering with it, that can be far more dangerous than face down.
Yeah, and if you're dealing with people that have been on medication, some of the more psychotropic sort of medications, then it's a hazard of the job. And even putting them in the prone position, then the diaphragm gets a certain amount of restriction, but but it's something that it's literally only through coronavirus and all this that it's made me think, because I've always questioned the get the word right, the
validity.
That's the one. That's the word. Of this prone restraint sort of thing. I mean, it's like Build were very much, don't use prone restraint. Well, what happens if a person happens to fall that way?
Yeah.
You ain't going to sort of turn around and say, "Oh, do you mind rolling over so we can restrain you?"
Yeah, well, Build.
You're going to have to work from whatever position you end up in.
Exactly. Yeah. Staff should know a variety of different positions.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other things Build did, which I want to talk to you about, and I kind of feel like Build have reformed into the restraint reduction network, was they were vehemently against the use of pain in any circumstances. So for years, we had people teaching breakaway systems that involved no pain whatsoever. Now, how do you feel about that?
I think, again, it comes down to the legality of what you're doing, and can you justify the force that you're using? And it's something that I always, I suppose, not really tongue-in-cheek, because it's not something to joke about, but I used to sort of, as part of the legality of doing and justification, I used to say to people to a certain point, you could, in effect, kill somebody, and as long as you can justify it, but that was the least amount of force needed to protect you and protect others, there isn't a court in the land that is going to actually convict you of that.
I understand what you're saying. It's about the situation.
But,
it's not
but,
about
but,
the technique.
but within the care setting, you couldn't turn around and go, well, you can kill people. It's sort of like, it doesn't go down well. but it is sort of like, you can't turn around to somebody and say you can never do X.
Yeah.
Because you can never say that a situation where X is called for is going to happen.
No.
And if you do say you can never use X in your policy, then you are potentially restricting that person's ability to protect themselves and protect others, and therefore you could actually be cited as a company for endangerment.
Yeah, negligence, endangerment. Yeah. There's laws in there for,
exactly.
For it,
yeah. Because one of the first jobs I did as a PMBA lead was completely rewrite our policy.
Yes.
Because it had been dragged from the old Home Office standards into what was then the GSA standards.
Yeah, I know GSA well. We do quite a lot of work with them.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, in the working environment, I'm one of these gates that, yes, I'll read every policy going, because I want to know, not necessarily every line of a policy, but I want to know what I'm meant to be working to.
That's right, yeah.
So that if something does go wrong, I can turn around and say, well, at least I was following the flavour of the policy. Sort of thing.
Or if somebody asks you to do something that's clearly outside of that policy, you can then say to them, go show me where it says I should be doing this.
Yeah, exactly. But, I actually sort of went up to the lead nurse of the trust and sort of said, look, I'm sorry, but this policy is crap. And bearing in mind, I just spent 2 years studying about violence reduction and the legality and Christ knows what else, with sort of Brodie Patterson and Jill, not Jill.
Was John Allen down
Gail
there?
Miller. Was John
Allen.
John Allen.
I know that's who heads the violence and aggression course up there. Shout out to John Allen. I actually got lost in Poland with him, but that's a story for another podcast.
Oh yeah. It was oh god, I wish. Oh, I really hate having blanks in my memory. Because names would come back to me in the middle of the night and wake me up, and they're like, "Oh, there it was."
Yeah, it'll come back to you. But yeah, you've spent a lot of time studying,
but no, I mean it's Professor Paul something other was the lead on that organised or verified the course to like the standards for university learning or whatever. And if his name pops back, I will come out with it, but it's not at the moment.
Oh, that's all right. But with that knowledge, you were obviously able to challenge the nurse on the policy.
Yeah, exactly. And I went through it, and he sort of said to me, "So, well, fair enough. I'll send you down a copy that because he had the, if you like, VD copy on his hard drive or whatever it was kept on." And he sent me down a copy that then I could actually
rip to pieces, basically. Have a look at, scrutinise.
It was rip it to pieces and rewrite sections and say, because it did have things like you must do as techniques at all, and you must you can't hurt people, you can't do this, you can't do
just
that.
Restrictions.
There's more you can't. There's more you can't do than what you could do, sort of thing. And I said, look, so like this policy. I mean, it was I don't know, 20 odd pages long or whatever. In tiny little print, and I literally just went through it, and sort of by the time I handed it back to him, or sent it back to him, as you do with electronics, there was more red on it than there was black, and he said, he read through it, and he went, "No, fair enough. You've evidenced every point you've stated on it, and we can evidence that back in the policy. Blah. You sign it off. It's changed, literally changed overnight. Bang.
And that's how policies should be. They're an organic document. They're like a garden that needs pruning every now and again. You've got to tend to certain bits of it more than others, and then it evolves. It's interesting what you say about the restrictive stuff being taken out. Obviously, with my involvement with mechanical restraint and soft restraints, I'll come across people saying we're not allowed to use them, and like you've done with the red pen, I'll sort of reference where we can use them and then send it back to them. And documents evolve, and I don't think people should be upset about being challenged. I think, or being questioned about why they put something in. That's part of being a professional, isn't it?
It goes with the territory. Yeah. I mean, if you don't put your head above the parapet, you've got to be shot at. I mean, that is life, and you don't take on those roles unless you're prepared to take a bit of flack, and you have to be, because you're not the top of the tree. There are directors and people above you, but you have to be in a position of authority where you can turn around to, I don't know, the CEO of the trust and say, this has to change now. Yeah. Because, and reference why it has to change now.
Yeah. And in what's...
You have to have the confidence within yourself and the knowledge within yourself that cannot be challenged.
That's right.
If you're employed as the expert of the trust, you have to be that expert. You can't be I don't really know.
Exactly. No, and I go to a lot of conferences and I bump into people and it's great. I see the same faces and the same people and they're out there. They're hungry for knowledge and they want to know what's going on. They want to know what case studies are out there. But then I do come across some other people and they tend to not be as operational, and they're the ones that they've heard something or learnt something and they just stick to it. And you think you've got to be fluid. You've got to be fluid all the time. We're always looking at new approaches or new angles or new ways of doing things. But all the time within a legal framework.
Yeah, very much, and it's to a certain point. Anything you teach, I mean, I was lucky. I practiced and taught jiu-jitsu for quite a long time, and a lot of the techniques that are taught within restraint originate from jiu-jitsu.
They're based on it, yeah.
And so knowing the nasty side of it, if you like, it meant that you could teach the techniques in a safer way.
That's right, because you know the dangerous areas
you
of the body,
knew
100%, yeah.
You know exactly how you're going to hurt somebody, so you know what parts you need to take out and why you're taking them out, and you understand that. It's not just somebody who's coming that's got no background knowledge that then turns around and says, "Oh, you must do it this way because that's the way the book tells you."
My book says you're doing your job wrong. Yeah, see, I was like you. I did martial arts from traditional jiu-jitsu from a young age, and then I went on to do sports science at college simply because the pressure points are the same as the healing points, and it was really easy to sort of understand. And I remember speaking at a conference, and the title I'd been given at the conference was something negative. It was like ex-bodyguard and martial artist, and I remember hearing someone say, they didn't know I was in the audience listening, "Oh, I don't see our martial artists, I don't think people that have done martial arts should be teaching restraint." And I thought, I think you're thinking along the lines of boxers, or I think you're thinking along the lines of maybe sports martial artists, but a traditional martial artist, the whole ethos is about avoidance in the first place, and a lot of it's about studying of body mechanics. And if you understand the body mechanics, you know which the way things bend. So it actually makes you a better practitioner. When you start doing the techniques, you think, all right, well, I understand why I'm doing this, rather than repetition of something that you don't understand why you're doing it.
Exactly. And it's like, it's a bit like if you go and hold an arm, you can hold the upper arm very easily with one hand.
Yeah.
And the bottom of the arm can swing around as much as it blooming well likes. It's not going to hit you or hurt anybody else because you got control over the upper arm, sort of thing. Ideally, yes, you want to have control of the lower arm as well. But if you do it the other way around and you've only got control of the lower arm, there's so much leverage there that you're going to get flung from pillar to corner, sort of thing. You've got no control.
No.
Sort of thing. So it's understanding sort of like that body mechanics and why you want to get the position at that point rather than somewhere else.
That's it. Yeah, and I think,
and having a clear understanding of why that is. It's not just because, oh, this is the way I did train the trainer course and I was told that this is what you have to do. You have to have that understanding, and I've talked with people, and I'm not going to name any names because they're still around in the business in one form or another, and I've sat there as an observer, like, to try and accredit their training to a certain body, and I've sort of almost left scratching my head at times, sort of going, well, where the hell did that come from? What you're talking about a situation that you've never actually been into.
No.
Your whole background, you started off the session by saying, "Oh, I've been in the service for 30 odd years, and I've worked in such and such, such and such." And then you've gone straight into sort of like, well, you get beaten up if you do this.
Yeah.
But you're talking about, you get beaten up if you happen to be working in a forensic service and you try and do that. But if you're working in an elderly service, then you're never going to have to worry about that sort of thing. It's sort of like it's people that don't have that broad range, that broader understanding, or attempted to get that broader understanding.
Yeah, we should all be. Restraint reduction practitioners. We should all be looking at the actual holds and the science behind the holds, and legal, tactical, and medical. But then we should be looking at the de-escalation as well. Like you say, if you just come in with with a blinkered view, it's not going to work.
I mean, I used to regularly go around the trust to see different areas and talk to people, and it's strange because the amount of people I trained them, it was some stupid amount numbers-wise in the time I was lead, and I was everybody's mate. Oh, they all knew me. I'd look at them, I go, Christ, have I met you before, sort of thing, because I just couldn't retain everybody. I mean, there were certain ones that I'd given nicknames to or something.
Well, you'll relate to this from teaching. I was teaching martial arts when I was 14, 15. Helping out on adults classes and teaching my own kids classes when I was 16, and still to this day I'll be out shopping and I'll hear someone shout "Sensei" across the supermarket, and it'll be someone who's probably about 25, and I used to teach him when he was 5 years old. But you deal with so many people, you lose track, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, you talking about that martial arts type scenarios, get me words out. After I had my stroke, I met my old training partner.
All right.
Now, I always trained with people that were at least two grades above me.
Quite a bit of experience, yeah.
All the way through. It wasn't out of choice. It was a case of sort of like that people kept on dying off, or well, not exactly dying off, but falling by the wayside. I mean, jiu-jitsu is not a nice martial art to have done to you.
It's not a nice hobby. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a fun hobby to have, but it's an acquired taste, isn't it? Bouncing off.
It's lovely. It's lovely doing all the techniques to other people, but if you're not prepared to get slung in the air and land in some heap somewhere, you're never going to get into it. You're never going to understand it. And that's why I sort of always ended up like with people, and I used to look at them and go, oh, God, I'm going to get killed. And no, I didn't get killed. I got better, and I got better and better because I was always having to step up the mark.
Yeah.
I could never sit back and go, oh, God, let's take it easy. I always had to step up to the next level because, yes, this person was training with me, but I had to train at a level that they could train at because them training with me was a complete waste of time unless they were getting what they needed out of it as well.
Yeah.
So if I don't know, for argument's sake, if I was learning, I don't know, say, God, trying to think of a name of a blooming throw.
Hip throw, learn the hip throw.
Yeah, just go for hip throw. That's easy. That's easy enough. But if I was learning hip throw, somebody else was learning a stomach throw.
Yes.
Well, hip throw, somebody who's senior to you can be quite nice about the way they do a hip throw on you.
Yeah.
They can't be nice doing the stomach
No,
throw.
you got to land with the forward flaps, haven't you? Keeping your coccyx off the floor.
Yeah, you're going to go some stupid distance in the air, and you're going to land with either completely on your back or the one side and then to your back, or exactly. It's not a nice technique. So that was the process I always ended up having to deal with, and it made me a better martial artist, but it also made me a better teacher, because I always remember this, and I took it with me all the way through every time I taught. And this is why I say people do things different, not wrong. I was teaching one night, and had this young woman first night there, and just teaching a basic hook punch. And this woman couldn't get this punch right to save her life. And again, she's like one of these people. She just thought she'd give it a go. She'd never had to fight anybody in her life, and didn't have a clue. Well, I was probably less than kind to her in the way that I was teaching.
Right.
And as I was driving home, I thought, hang on a minute, it wasn't her that was getting the technique wrong.
No.
It was me teaching her the technique wrong.
Yeah. And do you know what? That's a really valid point, because I think there's got to be a boundary here. You don't want people, when we talk about restraint, you don't want people coming and being battered and being scared and thinking all the way through it, I'm going to fail. But at the same time, you don't want something where there's not a single ounce of pressure testing. And I don't just mean restraint pressure testing. I mean maybe role plays getting in each other's faces and things like that. Because you want to toe that line down the middle, because if you go too far either way, you're either going to have intimidated, scared staff that perhaps emulate that, or you're going to have people that are wet behind the ear and aren't ready for what they're going to have to face.
And the other thing is you must have a pass or fail point.
Yes, yeah.
Again, so like when I started, or when I took on the lead role, the course was just an attendance course. People just attended
and
it.
And if they know that, there's no worth, is there?
Yeah, and I remember people coming back on updates, and the first year I was in post, because to fail somebody to me was hell.
Yes, yeah.
Because it involves so much paperwork of why, justifying to the managers, to sometimes occupational health, to them, and keeping a record of all the ins and outs of it. Was it for me? It was a week's worth of blooming work to fail somebody. It's easy enough saying you failed, but then to actually do all the paperwork, it is a pain in the blooming backside.
And you're going to put time into. Some trainers might just say, "Do you know what? Let's get him past."
Yeah, but I have failed people, and some people, unfortunately, have ended up, well, that was the end of their career, in effect, because they were physically incapable of actually doing the basic job, let alone doing anything.
Yeah, anything physical. Yeah.
Around management of violence. I mean, they might have been able to talk their way out of it, but they couldn't duck to save their life because their body wouldn't allow them.
No, and there is there's got to be an entrance level. There's got to be an entrance level standard, hasn't there? Where if you can't physically do the job, then you shouldn't be put in those positions.
Yeah, and there's been people that that I've taught that I failed because they're too gung-ho.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't fault them on technique and everything, but they're just too gung-ho. They're too much sort of like, oh, yeah, I'm going to, oh, I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll do the other. And you say, well, no, the attitude at this stage is just wrong.
Yeah.
They need a bit of time to embed to learn the job, if you like.
Bring them down.
And then bring them back in 3 months, run them through exactly the same course, and they're a completely different person.
Yeah.
They've suddenly lost all the bravado and the oh, of course I can do this because I'm strong and I'm tough and I never cry.
I'm a fighter and I'm a boxer. And if you look at the likes of Winterbourne View, and that's just one I've picked, you could look at any other undercover expose. I've heard people criticising the techniques, and I think it's not about the techniques. It's about the staff. It's about who they are. They're getting sent to prison for abuse.
Yeah.
Forget the restraint techniques they've taught. It's the actual people, and somebody should have picked up on that. Maybe on the restraint training to see how they were acting.
Very, very much so, and it's down to personality, and it comes down to sort of like even down to interview to a certain point. But I mean, I was in a very unfortunate situation when I was working in the community, where I was quite lucky because I was buffeted between the senior management and like the staff on the ground.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah, it
can be.
It turned out a good place for me at the time, because there was some quite major physical abuse that had happened.
Right.
Now, I'd had staff coming up to me telling me about their bunions and their grannies and goodness knows what else, and I knew something wasn't right. And I'd said to my manager that I knew something wasn't right, something was really adrift. And the way that the patient, well, the couple of patients that I was working with at the time were acting was off the scale, which I'd never experienced with those particular patients. No. Yes, I knew they could be very dangerous. But if you knew them, then generally speaking, you were relatively okay. But I remember the day when the director of the so-called non-for-profit blooming thing that was meant to save a fortune of the health service, when community care was started up, which I could never work out how suddenly 14 staff looking after 2 patients as opposed to 14 staff looking after 20 patients, how that was more cost effective.
Yeah.
I couldn't quite work that one out. But I can remember the director phoning me up and saying, look, such and such has happened at your unit, and so-and-so has been suspended. Yeah. And I remember sort of having a conversation saying that I just don't believe that it's this particular bloke. And I was right, it wasn't him. Unfortunately, the patient that had sparked the investigation had accolade speech.
Right.
And an accolade speech is a word that gets stuck in the head.
Ah, right, okay, yeah.
Or a phrase will get stuck in the head. So when this person was asked who had bruised them, instead of saying, like you or I might turn around and say, oh, it was Fred. Yeah. This person has got that one phrase stuck in their head, and they say, it was Harry. Harry hurt me. Harry hurt me. Harry hurt me. Harry hurt me. And every time you ask him the same question, the same answer comes out. but it's not necessarily. It's not them lying.
No.
It's just part of their disability is to do with speech and understanding and things.
Yeah, and
And
that's got to be part of the training, hasn't it? Yeah, as well as for me, de-escalation is about as much as understanding the conditions of the people you're interacting with, than anything at all. Than just sort of a putting your hand up and saying stop and reading body language and things like that. Because I've been reading about mismatching recently, and they were talking about how some people have been jailed simply because profilers have said, "Oh, of course they're guilty. Look at how they're acting." Now, I sometimes act nervously if I'm in uncomfortable situations. So, and sometimes it's mismatched. The actual body language doesn't match how people are feeling inside.
Yeah, and that's very much. It's something I understand. Trying to get my words out again. A lot better now than I probably did when I was practicing.
Yes.
When I was actually in post, so to speak, the amount of things that I look at now and I go, if I had the experience I have gone through over the last umpteen years, I would have been a much better nurse.
Oh, that's a great way of looking at it. And I think we need to learn from health and safety professionals. I think we need to learn from doctors as much as we can. But I think we need to learn from people who've been there, done it, and are now reflecting on it. Because, like you say, take a relationship, look back on a relationship, and you think, wow, how did I get in that in the first place? A personal relationship, you've got working relationships, and if you look back on it differently now, and we can share that expertise with the people that are wet behind ear or new to services or changing jobs, I think it's only a conducive way of moving forward.
Yeah, very, 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 very much so, and it's why I sort of, if you like, I started getting back into LinkedIn and getting back into some of my old contacts, and obviously you as a new contact in the scheme of things, was to catch up with where I'd left off.
Yeah, and where's it going? Because it's become an animal. It's become an animal that's evolving.
Yeah, well, it's constantly evolving. It's constantly moving, and I know full well in the time that I've and I know that I could never. Well, I don't know. I mean, the DWP will say I could never work again.
Right.
Because of the sort of damage that I managed to do to my brain.
I was going to ask about that. How, if you do want to tell us about what happened and how it affected you?
Yeah, I mean, I literally, the being in the role I was over the Christmas period, nothing happened.
Right.
There was nothing that could happen, and it was handy because my birthday's sort of around about New Year and all that. So I used to take leave over that period, and I left sort of saying, like, usual joke sort of thing, oh, I'm only working to retire sort of thing, and it was a day before I was due to resume work, and I was actually resuming on an induction week, where I would have been teaching a full restraint course.
Yeah, the famous January, first few days of January, they're always chaos.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, this was a bit later in January, sort of like when I would have been, because I mean, I planned it so that I had all the paperwork ready and everything to go in to do the teaching and all that. And I just had a niggle in my shoulder, And I thought, oh, so crikey, so like, try to, how
Typical
you move
man
your
thing,
shoulder
play
around.
it off. Yeah.
You slipped a bit awkward, and
Yeah.
you try and move your shoulder and all that. And I'd had a shower, and I just thought sort of like, oh, I don't know what the hell this is all about. But it was enough for me to go, I noticed that. But not enough for me to go, oh, I need some paracetamol, or I need to go to the doctor,
Yeah.
or I need to do X, Y, Z or anything. And I was literally getting dressed, and which was handy, really, because the ambulance crew would have had a bit of a shock otherwise, I suppose. But I literally fell over.
Right.
No rhyme or reason. No. And luckily, the bed was in front of me, and I fell across the bed, and I thought, oh, that was a bit odd.
Yeah.
I didn't feel dizzy. I didn't trip on any. I wasn't even moving, sort of thing. And I suddenly found myself sort of flying forward, and I lay there for a little bit, and I thought, no, I'm going to talk this one out with somebody because this ain't making sense. Yeah. And I thought my missus is having my missus, who's ex-missus now, but having a shower. And then I thought, oh God, I think I'm going to sort of vomit, sort of thing. And I thought, she ain't going to be happy if I do this all over the blooming bed.
It's funny how you think about practical solutions and emergencies.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought I'd go to the bathroom, which is apparently opposite the bedroom door. I mean, nobody at the time, we lived in a bungalow, but everything was on the same level. Yeah. But I'd stood up and I'd started walking, and I just was, rather than walking, I was falling. I was just, it was like an unguided missile sort of thing. And I hit the bathroom door. I don't think I even touched the handle, but the door burst open. There's a missus in the shower, sort of thing, covered, as far as I know anyway, covered head to toe in soap and suds and shampoo and Christ knows what else, and ended up hugging the toilet.
Right.
My missus sort of like opened the shower screen and sort of like, what the hell do you think you're doing? Yeah. And then she realised that I wasn't mucking about or anything. No. I was a little bit unwell. And she phoned up the ambulance and said, look, he just come flying through the door. He sort of bust the door open and he's sort of hugging the toilet. He's foaming at her mouth and he's not making any sense and Christ knows where. Yeah. And ambulance crew turned up. Yeah, I think he's had a stroke. I was 46 at the time. I think he's had a stroke. Do you reckon you can get up and get to the ambulance? And of course I can. Yeah. No, bloody couldn't. Sort of thing. One side of me didn't work. Wow. Sort of thing. But from onset to hitting hospital, which was near Sussex and something.
All right.
Sussex and East Kent, I think, hospital, as it was in those days. From onset to being on the wall being treated was about 45 minutes.
Yeah, but this is the NHS, isn't it?
Extremely quick response. And I was thrombolised. But as it happens, it wouldn't have made any difference because it was vertical artery
Right.
leading to my brain that collapsed, basically. So thrombolyzing there wasn't a clot there to dissolve, and there wasn't a bleed to stop. It was just one of those blooming things that led to the base of my skull, and that messed up. If you think of a computer and you've got a nice, I don't know what core processor they're up to these days, but you think of a computer and you knacker that processor, the computer goes, I ain't got a clue what the hell's going on.
No.
And that's a bit of my brain that I managed to mess around with. So that's where it comes from sort of like you can't do service, you can't why the DWP say so you can't work and things, because you it's like you can never guarantee the date.
Yes.
If you get what I mean.
I understand. Yeah, I've got a friend who's got
which is it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating because it could be sort of like, I don't know, a month or so, and then all of a sudden I have a bit of a downer sort of time where my brain sort of decides it isn't going to work for a few days, and nothing. Things make sense, but
Yeah.
it's great in my own little world. I can play it being normal.
Right.
Step outside that world, and it becomes a bit more plainly obvious. There's something not all the tickets, so to speak.
Yeah, I know what you mean. See, for me,
but it's something that I didn't want to. I didn't want it to be like the end of my dreams and the end of my goals,
Yes.
and end of everything I'd worked so bloody hard to get to. And I thought, well, I've still got knowledge, I've still got experience, and I've still got a brain that can actually read.
Yeah.
Although I find it hard to read a book, I can read a report because it's a different type of reading.
Yes.
It's very different. You're not taking a story. You're reading through. It could be a ream of whole different figures, but you're not reading every single figure because you're not interested in every single figure.
Okay.
You're interested in the figure at the end of it, and that's the way you read a report.
Yeah.
So I can do that, but I can't guarantee I can do that 5 days a week.
Yeah, I understand.
I can do that. There's certain days I can, and certain days I can't. Well, that's easy come, easy go. But that's why I got involved with LinkedIn and reconnecting with people and finding new people, was because I knew I still had that ability and I still had that knowledge. And at a certain point, I still got that skill, because if push comes to shove, then any disability I might have, and I've only had one instance, so like where this has actually occurred, is somebody basically sort of like become a threat towards me, and literally. It was a bit like Superman in the phone box, spinning around and coming out again in his nice shiny suit with his pants over his trousers. But it was literally bang from being quite disabled to suddenly, no, hang on a minute, I'm going to take your blooming head off if you carry on.
That
like
primitive
this.
response, or those skills that you learnt all those years ago, were still there despite your disability. Yeah.
Exactly. I've practiced those skills for so many years and for so long that that was a natural response.
Yeah.
That I didn't have to think about. That wasn't. It wasn't like, oh, you have to do A to B to C. It's just one of those things. It's the same as breathing, same as putting one foot in front of the other. It's that simple when push comes to shove.
Yeah, you've got those motor skills. You've had those motor skills for so many years that they're just in there with your final flight. I understand that.
Yeah, and it's something that I didn't want to throw away.
Yeah.
It's something that I thought that, yes, I have a voice, I have an opinion, I have knowledge, and it's worth sharing that. Right, people can turn around and say, well, that's a load of rubbish, and who the hell are you to tell us?
That's healthy
or
discussion.
Whatever. But it's up to them. Yeah. It's same as you speaking to me, and you said, well, hang on a minute, yeah, he's worth talking to.
Yeah.
It's worth listening to, because, right, we might not agree on every point, and I might not know the history of why certain things have happened, like in some of your kitten things. And when I've questioned it, I've said, well, why?
Yeah.
And then you've come back with the history of it, and well, then that makes sense.
Exactly.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. Without asking the questions, we don't get the answers, do we? People have got to be open to scrutiny and questions, and I think that there's so much to be learned from people with sector-specific knowledge that perhaps aren't in the game anymore. Because there's an old saying, isn't it? Upton Sinclair said it's very difficult to get a man to agree on something that his pay scale depends on him not agreeing with. And some people will lose their jobs if they challenge things or if they talk about things. And I suppose that's one of the luxuries you've got.
It's very much a luxury. It's so much of a luxury now, because when I was actually in the job, I had to follow the party line.
Yes.
You had to. You had to follow the NHS line. You had to follow SMS, and the security
LSMS.
management service.
Yeah, local security management, was it?
Yeah, you had that part of it, and then you had the counter fraud and security management service.
That's right. Yeah.
Which was the governing, sort of like the overarching body at the time. And if you were employed and you said something that was a little bit controversial, then I was never one that worried about making friends, sort of thing. People, so like, I mean, I'm not a mercenary or anything. I'm not a wild card or anything. But I've always thought, well, if I've thought something and I'm concerned about something, I'll ask questions about it.
Yeah.
And I'll keep asking questions, and I will not go away until I get an answer that actually makes sense, or I find out something that I can then turn around and say, well, this is why it doesn't make sense.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've never been like the party follower in that respect, sort of thing. I've been the one that's the pain in the arse, one that where sort of like at a certain point people turn around and go, oh God, here he comes again.
Because they just want an easy life. They want a tick in the box and they want to sail through. And if you challenge the policy, it takes work. That's where people are, unfortunately.
I mean, our legal department loved me to a certain point, because they knew full well that when things happened, they could come to me and say, you know so-and-so, and I'll go, no, but I'll have a look at my records. And they go, well, that's what we're asking for. Were they able to do such and such? Should they have been in such and such situation? Or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'll go back and I'll look through everything and go through my records and I'll go, oh no, that person was referred to Op Health for such and such, such and such. And their manager was told that they need to risk assess around that person's role and abilities and cross knows what else. Oh, thank you very much. That's covered our arses, so to speak.
So it's also about protecting the organisation. I completely agree, because sometimes when I talk, I sound like I'm demonising the NHS or I'm demonising correctionals or things like that. The staff that work there are instrumental in reputations, and sometimes they can turn on them and they can try and sue organisations. And if that's done, then trainers and security professionals and PMBA tutors, if they've kept adequate records, they'll be able to show crystal clear if there ever was a problem.
Exactly, and do you have to do that? And it's something my first manager told me that if anything happens that doesn't feel quite right, you keep records, and you keep records in triplicate, because you can bet your life the official record, when push comes to shove, it's going to disappear somewhere. And I've lived by that for 20 odd years, 25, 26 years. I've lived by that motto, and it stood me in good stead. That I've always, any situation, I can turn around and say, well, this is what I did, and this is what X, Y, Z did at that particular time, or that sort of thing. I know of another trainer. We had one other trainer in the trust that was specialist. Works in a certain area. Again, doesn't matter what area at this stage. But he was a very senior manager. And at a certain point, he took teaching as, well, it gave him a bit of time out, a bit of thinking time, a bit of, oh, I don't have to be the big manager sort of time. So it's a bit of relaxation for him, I suppose. But funny enough, just before I had my stroke, he'd actually invited me back into his service, because he said, I don't know whether I'm teaching the right stuff in the right way and everything, and I want you to come in to review what I'm doing.
Right.
Which is funny, because he used to be like the trust guru that knew everything. And he suddenly turned around to me and saying, sort of like, look, can you come in and sort it all out? Well, I would have done, but I blew my head up instead. But he actually, unfortunately, something had happened when he was on a certain unit that he wasn't part of, but he was aware of. Now, he wasn't aware of all the ins and outs and everything else, but he was aware of the incident. And being the level he was, he should have known more about what had happened. He should have investigated. He should have turned around and said, yes, this is right. No, this is wrong. He didn't do that. Unfortunately, the patient went through PALS, and an independent manager was put in charge of investigating.
Right.
Well, the fact that this other manager was in effect on the premises and should have been aware, it put him in an untenable position. So he had, I mean, he was well into the time where he could have taken his pension, which was lucky for him, because he was given the option, either you get tied up with the investigation or you retire, basically. well, he did the honourable thing and retired in that respect. But he should, if he'd done the right thing at the right time, he wouldn't have had to make that choice.
No, I know what you mean. I think as well as the restraint training and the reactive stuff, the management training is just as important. Making sure people understand they can make decisions and be supported, and making them educated about fiscal responsibilities of directors, making them responsible about how investigations should be managed. I was interviewing a security manager from a hospital the other day, and he was talking about how closely he worked with the police and how much control he had over things. I think sometimes people might. Do you think he was scared to make decisions, perhaps, or to get involved with the investigation?
I think he was. I think in his case, on that occasion, from what I know about the incident, he was being his usual. I want to be liked by everybody.
Yeah.
And he possibly did turn around to the individuals involved and sort of said, "Look, you shouldn't have done that. You know that." Sort of thing. Now grow up and be a bit more adult about things, or along those lines. But he didn't record it.
No.
Now, if he did have that conversation, if he didn't have that conversation, there's no record of it.
No.
There's no way of backtracking and saying, well, yes, I actually did have a chat with him, and I did sort of, in my position as the very high up manager, decide that as I was on site, that I could sort things out in an amicable, peaceful way. And then if the patient was taking it further, then I could have dealt with that in an impartial way, because I'd already dealt with the first bit.
But unfortunately, because it's not written down, it didn't happen.
Exactly. And that was the first lesson I learnt, was always put it down in writing and keep it in triplicate.
100%.
Because sooner or later something will come back and bite.
Yeah, that's as certain as death and taxes. Now, one of the things that this is a while ago we had this discussion, so it might be difficult to recall because I'm difficult to recall it. But I sent you a copy of the Restraint Reduction Network standards. Now, they've been an evolving document as we sort of move forwards. I'm not sure how much you know about the Restraint Reduction Network. I did mention before that they've kind of been a rebranded build, which is that's how I feel they are. It's build that are now taking down the pretense that you can't use restrictive techniques or you can't use certain holds, changing the terminology slightly, and they put this guidance out, which is on. There's no mandate on it at the moment. It's just mental health hospitals. They're looking to try and roll that out further. But how do you feel about the Restraint Reduction Network and the standards that they're pushing?
From what I can remember about them, they actually made sense.
Yes.
The concern I had, and it was probably more my I suppose prejudice, to a certain point, was the fact that Build was involved.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was at, because I saw someone. Sorry to interrupt. Saw someone talk from Build, and he actually shared the same view as me, and he was saying, "Do you know what? When I saw this coming through, I was like, oh, not another Quango, not another thing." But he sold it to me in the right way, that it's a positive thing that's sort of bringing a standardisation across the board.
Yeah. And I mean, Build has been trying for 30 years to get a toehold into the regulation side of things. And they've done this sort of like this Build accreditation thing, which is a bit of a Quango idea, and sort of like, if your face fits and you get accredited and if your face doesn't fit, you won't get accredited, sort of type.
And an
Sort of
important
setup.
thing for our listeners is it was never about accrediting techniques, it was about accrediting organisations. So when people sort of went
Yeah.
along with the build accreditation to have a guarantee of safety and
Mm.
quality of the techniques, a lot of the case
Mm.
studies where people have said, this is bad practice, we don't like this. There's a lady called Beth Morrison who's talked about restraints. Well, a lot of those systems
Mm.
were build
Mm.
accredited. So you know,
Mm.
to
Mm.
try and reinvent that now and say that's what I don't want the restraint reduction network to become, something where they just say, right, you can have a badge if you give us all this money and if you promise you won't do X, Y, and Z, or if you do it, call it something else. I just think that's a waste of everyone's time and it's an accident waiting to happen.
It's exactly what you just said. It is no good just being a reinvention of build in different terms or whatever. I'm sorry. I mean, I went up against build a couple of times, and I can't say I was impressed with their. I wasn't impressed with their professionalism in what they were looking at and why they were looking at it, and their standards were very wishy-washy in sort of like in why you would do. It was like, well, if you pass somebody, how do you prove that?
Yes.
Well, I'll prove it because they can do what I've asked them to do in the right way and in the right manner and apply the right force and all that. Oh, but how do you demonstrate that?
Yes. Yeah, where's the audit
Sort of
trail?
thing. It's, like, it's at the end of the day, I've given him a certificate and told him he's capable of doing the job. I'm not going to go through every single technique and say he can do this, he can do that, he can't do this, he can't do that. Because if he can't do one of the things, then he can't do any of the things.
Yeah.
That is my standard. That is where I will draw the line. And I have failed people that have been long term in the service on those grounds because they've come into the course, into the update course with the attitude of, oh, this is just sort of like another rubber stamp.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. You've got to actually know what you're bloody well doing and why you're doing it. And if you can't demonstrate that to me, then you ain't going to pass it.
No, and the I like the vocational. We offer vocational awards, and I refresh my skills with providers that do that. And and it doesn't have to be sort of on the national framework, but you need to have learning objectives. You need to have clear outcomes. You need to have correct assessment methods that are smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound, and all that business. So you've got actual teaching principles that people can follow. Then, if there is a training course that people are going to do, you don't lose any of that quality going through. And that's what I didn't like about where people use this build accreditation, and then you turn up and there was little or no paperwork. There was no accommodation made for people that maybe need bigger print or are hard of hearing. I think that, and that's from
but yeah, I mean, build would. It's a bit like where I'd broken down courses into. So we had like the elderly courses. We had the learning disability
with the more
courses.
specific angle.
We had So like the theory on learning disability courses went more towards the things that you'll come across within learning disability. It's like Down syndrome with unstable. Oh God, what do you call the spine? Vertebrae, things like that. which are like it's part of the syndrome.
Yes.
But why would I teach that to somebody who's doing a forensic course?
Yeah.
They're not going to come across a Down syndrome person who's done a mad axe murdering spree through Tesco's or something. Well, I don't know, you might do. But it's teaching the right knowledge to the right people.
That's right.
And it's same as CAMS. It's teaching CAMS people what they need to know for dealing with children. Because CAMS was the last area I actually started to get agreement with him.
Okay.
They were very resistant to anything that was classed under PMBA.
Yeah, because they don't want to admit there's a problem and it's children, so you shouldn't be treating them like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I went through their records, and according to their records, they had no incidents whatsoever.
No, you find that.
Yeah, no, they've not had any incidents. Then I went through their incident reports.
Yeah.
And on none of them did it say restraint or anything, but reading the reports, so-and-so was carried out to the car with the parent present and put in the car and held in the car while the seatbelt was done up and blah.
Sounds pretty restrictive to me.
Well, that is a restrictive technique.
Yeah, it sounds restrainty.
Now, who taught that person how to do
Yes.
that? Oh, we have this person that used to work in such and such, such and such. And who are they?
Yeah.
Are they following our
What's
policy?
the credentials? It's like when people do risk assessments. What's their qualification to do a risk assessment? Otherwise,
Exactly.
you're just collecting data, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. And eventually I got through to them and sort of said, look, I'm not here because I want to slam every kid, every 3-year-old toddler into the floor on top of the Lego bricks and restrain them. But there's been deaths in custody of young people. There's names, sir, I can't bring
Gareth
names.
Meyer. I think you're referring to Gareth Meyer.
That's one. That is quite a big one, because I think he was the first one that really hit the headlines in the youth sector anyway. And he was held in the sitting position.
That's right. Yeah, and it was vomit aspiration he died from during the intervention.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was no reason for that. There's no need for that. In fact, there was no need for the restraint.
No, I think it was
There's
a rude note. Was it a rude note passed to a female warden? I think, and then there was some kind of argument demanded to be taken to his cell.
He'd wanted to make a phone call to his mother.
Yes, yeah.
His mother's telephone number had changed, and he'd written it on a bit of paper,
right.
Which he'd held strongly in his hand. And whoever they were, warders, prison officers, I don't know what the hell you called people in that situation, had asked him for that bit of paper. Well, that was his only link back to his mother.
Yeah, I agree. And that
was his only link.
Yeah.
And they wanted to take it away from him.
I think that's why the story was spun that it was a rude note, because we never saw that piece of paper. And like you say, his solicitor is the one that actually broke that story and said, no, it was a moment. It was the only way I've got of contacting my mum. And like you say, it's all in the de-escalation. Was there a point where he should have been held, able to wipe vomit on the person's knee next to him during the intervention for that lengthy period of time? And like you say, it's
Yeah, but there was absolutely no reason for that restraint to have taken place in the first place. So, and that's that, and it's things like that, and it's trying to get through to the people in CAMS that is what they're playing with. That is a danger they're playing with. If they don't follow the guidance, if they don't do what the policy states,
Yeah.
sort of thing. I don't give a monkey's whether the director of CAMS says, "Oh, we do it this way." The director hasn't got any authority over that policy.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Sort of thing. So either they fall in line, or they basically they're out on their own, sort of thing. I mean, so there's no way the trust can actually support them in any action that might be taken against them.
No. Me.
And the trust will turn around and say, "Sorry, but this is nothing to do with us," sort of thing. And they're quite legally in their power to do that if somebody acts outside of a policy.
Yeah, there's some interesting cases come about to do with corporate manslaughter, and also directors' liability and things like that. So the landscape is changing from the people I've spoken to who have left services, or the old school people who've been around. They've all said to me, well, at least people are getting training. At least we've got policies. At least we're not now having this absolute ban on the use of certain mechanical or soft restraint devices, and we can consider it.
Yeah.
So things are getting better. I mean, have you got any pointers as to how services could improve, or do you have an idea as to how things are going to move forwards from now on?
I'd love to say that it would one day get to the point where restraint will never ever happen.
We'd all like that, wouldn't we? Yeah.
But reality is there is always going to be that situation where somebody loses control.
Yes.
Now, if it always went the way that it did with my Ethel fella,
yes,
where he turns around and says, "Look, I understood that I wasn't in control, and you controlled the situation, and you controlled it calmly, and it calmed me down, and it helped out, and all that."
Yes.
That is the ideal. That is where we want to be. We are going to have to do things that in certain situations are not pleasant. Having to use, I know rapid tranquilization has changed sort of since I last was on the wall.
Yes.
But there is still going to be times where we are going to stab somebody up the bum, and they aren't going to want it.
Yes.
It's always going to happen somewhere.
Or it may be that
they're immune. How we approach that.
It may be that they're immune to sedation, or that there's complications with the sedation we're giving them, so they're going to need to be restrained during it. It's an inevitable.
Well, if you're using rapid tranquilization, then side effects are quite horrific, and they'd be extremely painful. I mean, they don't do 2 and 10 anymore. They use injectable olanzapine as opposed to.
Well, I've got little experience of this, but I can tell you one drug.
It was haloperidol and oh god. So this is where my brain lets me down.
Oh, that's right. Well, have you heard of midazolam?
Yep.
So, midazolam, there's a quote from the Surgeon General of the United States where he says it's the chemical equivalent of being burnt at the stake. Now, I've little or no experience with injecting people with things, but if that's what someone's saying, wow.
I wouldn't think it was, because it's actually used by the air ambulance.
Right, okay.
If they've got to, for argument's sake, somebody's got an open fracture and circulation's compromised, so they might have to pull a leg straight or something. They're quite often given a dose of midazolam in order to carry that procedure out.
Yeah.
The thing is about using a lot of the modern medications now is one of the nice side effects is the fact that although the person might scream bloody murder, that the people are hurting them, i.e. they're pulling a broken bone and everything back in line, they've got no memory of it.
Right, okay.
They don't remember anything about it. They're happy as Larry, sort of thing. And it never happened. Never happened. Quite often they have to be told that it's happened.
Yeah.
Because they know full well they broke their leg. They know full well that something went wrong. And they know full well that a doctor or paramedic has told them that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then the next thing they know is the doctor or the paramedics turning around and saying, "It's all done, mate. We're going to package you up and we're going to shove you in the helicopter and off we go. And you'll be in such and such hospital at such and such time." And they're going sort of, whoa, when did that happen?
Yeah, so and now the
Sort of thing,
danger,
because
the danger for me is if they're being restrained at that time, they might need, you want to communicate with the person that's being restrained. So that might be the downside.
Yeah. Well, if you're using midazolam and stuff like that, you shouldn't be using it unless you are specially trained to use that sort of stuff. It should be a doctor that's prescribing it, ideally a doctor on site that's actually managing it. Unless you're an advanced practitioner, like some of the paramedics are advanced practitioners, but even they have to get, if you like, the okay. They have to talk to a doctor to say, this is what we've got to do. Can we do it? And the doctor might say, well, yes, you're in that position, you know what you're doing, blah, 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 do it, and we sort out the paperwork when you arrive or whatever. But you have to be an advanced practitioner. You can't just be, I've just got out of college and the first thing that I've walked onto the wall and I'm suddenly drawing up midazolam to rapid train somebody.
I think we're quite good with that. I just wonder sometimes if doctors knew that there was an alternative in the form of some kind of restraint device, that because what from the studies we've had and from the live the operational experience people have told us about the feedback, if you're holding someone, they carry on struggling, but if you put them in a device, they often just calm down. And you see that in most police arrests as it is. And I think because the way the UK is, maybe because of what happened at Bethlehem Hospital and other hospitals where they said, we're not doing restraints anymore, we're not fastening people to beds anymore, because we threw them out and they disappeared. People think, right, well, it's restraint or rapid trank. That's it. Yeah,
I mean, it's certainly something I started to research.
Yeah.
Towards the end of my time was, again, it was looking at. I don't know whether this would have been 2010.
Oh right, yeah.
Were you on the scene with your
the restraint belts?
Self-restraint?
Yeah, well, I took over the business after Pete Boatman died. Mark Williams took over, and I took over the ownership of the restraint belts. So the original emergency response belts are ours.
That's probably because that was the sort of stuff I was looking at. Again, I was thinking more forensically. I mean, I've got a hell of a lot more forensic experience than although I'd had a lot of learning disability and I'd worked elderly, but forensic is where I'd really sort of like cut my teeth, so to
Yeah.
speak, as a nurse sort of thing. And I was looking at that because they were trying to reduce the use of seclusion. And it was like, okay, if you're going to reduce seclusion, how do you mitigate the fact that you've no longer got seclusion? Because I knew of a case of where they'd actually repurposed a seclusion room in one unit.
Yeah.
And then they had to transfer somebody very precariously in the back of a van from one unit to the main unit.
Okay.
To seclude them. Because they'd repurposed the seclusion room on the unit where the person had originally been. And it was things like that. It was like, how do you mitigate that? How do you actually, because if you hold somebody in the back of a van, all right, maybe a nice van, it's got nice seats, it's a van.
Yeah.
Whichever way you look at it. Okay, so are you holding them in the seated position? Are you holding them upright? Have you managed to get a seatbelt on them?
Are you complaining?
Okay, you're hardly driving on open road, and you're not going to be flying at 40 miles an hour, blue lights and all that rubbish. But or are they laid across the seat? Are they on the floor of the van? Are they? What are you doing to mitigate that whole process? That you've got rid of their seclusion room, so you've lost that ability to use that as needed.
As a containment, you're now on wheels.
Now
traveling.
you have to put extra steps in to do what you would have done with no steps.
Yes.
So that's why I was starting to look at, okay, are there restraints that you can use? And when I spoke to people about it, it's we haven't got grounds to use handcuffs, and we haven't got grounds to use this, and we haven't. And it was sort of like, well, no, hang on a minute, you have. Even sort of like chain link handcuffs, you've got grounds to use them.
It's work equipment.
As long as you
they're not weapons.
default.
As long as people are trained and they're fit for purpose, then they're things that need considering. Because, like you say, without considering it, seclusion goes up, restrictive holds go up.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a big argument. I sort of had my day with the cans people and got them on side. And that was my next, if you like, battle that I picked. So it is a case of you pick your battles at the right time and in the right way. You can't fight all the people all the time on everything at the same time, because you just lose track of everything and you end up looking like a complete and utter plonker. But that was my next, if you like, my next sort of I don't know, the addition to the service, to the system, to ways of practicing, because it is a case like, if you could put somebody with, for argument's sake, a belt with cuffs, and put them in a quieter area, not secluding them necessarily, but in a quieter area where people aren't going, oh, look at him, he's being a complete or whatever. And they can run around and they can scream and shout and jump up and down, but they can't take anybody's head off, and they can't find a weapon and stab anybody with, and they can't cut themselves, and they can't. It's about mitigating, about what are you going to do instead of. It's not necessarily you're doing something worse.
No, it might be less restrictive. Different. It might actually be less restrictive than an injection in the backside or locking somebody in a room with no end. Because if when the last time they came out of the room they assaulted someone, your risk assessment is going to say, we might not be allowed to let this person out of this room. Well, if you had, like you say, if you added a simple setup of cuffs and then something around the ankles perhaps, they can't kick you, they can't hit you. So then the next 3 times you come out of seclusion, they're fine. That's when you take one of the arms out, or you take both arms out, and you can actually get somebody on the pathway to recovery, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was the whole. It is. It's like you can't. It's a move. When you work in this. When you work in this field sort of thing. I haven't earned a wage from it. Well, I have a pension, so to speak. So I'm still earning from it. But when you work in this field, it's a moving target the whole time.
Yeah.
Because there's new evidence coming on board. But it's like this coronavirus sort of thing that I mentioned to you in the whatever you call it,
the
on
messages,
LinkedIn,
yeah.
was like where, in light of the fact that people are rotated to their front to increase lung capacity when they're being treated like they're being ventilated. All right, yes, they're being ventilated under pressure because that's the way you ventilate somebody. But it goes completely against the whole argument of laying somebody on their front.
Yes, yeah, it does.
In restraint. Because if you're not putting any pressure on their torso, what is different to them laying on their front and having a kick?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Nat Carey at the police complaints conference, he said if somebody's got a large beer abdomen and you lie them on the front, the abdominal contents press into the diaphragm prevents them from breathing. And you think, okay, yeah, in some cases it does, but some people choose to lie on the front, they choose to sleep on the front, and they're more comfortable on the front. And as you've seen, these coronavirus people, they had quite large abdomens. I saw some of the patients, but they still put them on the front. And so I know that Brodie Patterson actually put it onto a forum the other day, and I thought, well, that's pretty brave of you, because people instantly were like, is he trying to bring back prone? He's like, no, he's trying to have a sensible discussion with some new information and evidence that's come out. So let's all interact.
Brodie, I've got a lot of admiration for, because he has sort of put the cat amongst the pigeons on more than one occasion, sort of thing. He does tend to shake things up a little bit if he looks at things and goes, so like, well, hang on a minute, sort of in. I mean, he'll question things for the sake of questioning them, just because, well, if you don't question them, you never think a different way.
No, he's good. He got me over to speak at a conference on the use of the soft restraints and things, and some people would be inclined to say, do you know what, leave him at home, don't let him have a voice, because people aren't going to like to hear about it. People don't want to hear about mechanical restraint. So it was great he gave me that opportunity, and from it we've had lots of traction from it.
Yeah, and you should get lots of traction. I mean, because it's like when I asked you, or started speaking to you originally, and about self-restraint and all that, and I asked you about how everything worked, and the fact you had to go hands-on in order to get the person into
you'll have control of it first.
So that there were things that were thrown up straight away from my point of view, and you've answered every time I've asked you something. You've answered it to a satisfactory level. Sort of mean sort of. No, I don't mean that sort of saying, well, you wouldn't answer it to a satisfactory level.
No, I've given a satisfactory answer.
So like, it's me trying to understand X, Y, Z, and you explaining X, Y, Z. It's a bit like when I said about this
the seals.
This sort of like carry the seal, that's the one. It's like I said about playing devil's advocate, it's like, oh, you're just inventing something
For the sake of having a new
because,
thing to get people to buy, I completely agree. Yeah, I completely
yeah,
agree. There's
yeah,
some of that going on out there.
but then you come back and say, well, actually, Ramsden had something
Yeah,
that they were using. They wanted to update, and they couldn't do it at a cost that they wanted to pay,
yeah,
and therefore you took it on and you reviewed it and you looked at it and you adapted it and you changed it and you provided something that did the job that they wanted in effect.
yeah. And we sort of took a.
And it made perfect sense
Yes.
then when you said, but you didn't turn around and say, oh well, actually, this is why this happened, that's why that happened, that's why that happened. Stuff. You still kept at the end of it, but there's further work needed because of the position
Yes.
of
Yeah.
holding things,
Well,
and you're looking at reviewing that and blah blah blah.
one of the
blah.
things that come out
So
of it was about not carrying someone face down. One of the things, we got the medical review done, and the doctor said to us, "Why don't you carry someone face up?" So we looked at it, and we actually found that people have been using it to carry people face up. So we thought, brilliant. People are so against prone. Let's do the supine. So we kind of went back to the drawing board on that, but we'd never have known if we hadn't spoke to people like yourself and put it out there and said, "What do you think?" Because that's how you find out about things.
Yeah, but the whole thing is like, I mean, it's something that it's like Bethlehem had the mother and baby unit, and there are times where restraint was used within that environment, and at the time they used like beanbags to restrain the mothers to be on. But because they were pregnant, they said, oh, you can't take them down prone.
Yeah.
So you have to take them down supine. If you're taking them down supine, because they're pregnant, we need to provide something for them to go back onto, so they use beanbags. Yes. But then, in using the beanbags, it meant that the baby then impacted on the diaphragm, which then restricted breathing, which then caused problems. And you're back into that whole sort of, well, yeah, great, you've got somebody in the supine position, but you're still causing positional
asphyxia. Yeah, you've solved one, but you created another problem.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you laid them on their front, well, great, they're pregnant, but that's the whole point of why the baby's where it is and how it's kept within the mother. As long as you haven't gone, oh dear, splat on the floor, you're it's like looking at nature. Nature's done things for us for a reason. Yes. It's not just something like, oh, bloody hell, that's a good idea. It's evolved for a reason. And the baby's carried in the mother where it's carried because it protects the baby.
Yeah.
And if you then try and mitigate to protect the mother because of the baby, but the baby then impacts on the mother because the mitigation you've taken doesn't work, then it's making a mockery of it all.
Of course it is. And that's what a difficult thing to have to solve, like restraint during pregnancy. But they're the kind of challenges. And when people say, we want to ban this and we want to stop this, they're forgetting that the people in these positions, not only have they got vast experience and understanding of this, they're also consulting with medical professionals. So if you consult with a medical professional and discuss what we've just discussed there, you can come out with something that doesn't have a cognitive bias. It's not based on emotional misunderstanding. It's based on science and fact and tactically and operationally getting the job done.
And that's the important thing, and that's what we need to be striving for the whole time. We need to get the emotion out of it, and the whole, if you like, the restraint business if you call it a business. All right, I don't like it being called that really, because it's part of a toolbox. It's part of a toolbox that in certain areas has to be used at times. Right. And I've lost track of where I was going with that one.
We're just talking about how you've got to have a variety of approaches, and it's got to be not from an emotive point of view. Like people that say restraint's bad, they're missing the point, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. If they just sort of look at something and go, well, this happened and that wasn't very good, so we're never going to do it ever again. Yeah. Well, why did it? Let's explore what happened and why it happened, and what I did a peer review of, or part of a peer review of deaths in custody, back in would have been 2007, 2008, something like that, and it was in the from the literature searches that we went through about like the inquests and the reports and the news coverage and oh god, everything that went into sort of like to where all these sensational headlines of Rocky Bennett and Christ knows who else. When you dig down into all that, it's not one thing that has caused the situation.
It's factors. It's multiple factors.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, yes, you can turn around in hindsight and say, no, it should never have happened. And you're right, it should never have happened. But you weren't there at that time.
That's right.
You weren't dealing with that situation. And you've got to look at the environment and the management of that environment and what facilities and what resources were available to the staff that were there at that time, and who trained them and how they're trained and
what the culture
their
is.
Knowledge and exactly, and all that has to be taken into account. You can't just say, yes, you can be very emotive and say, oh, it's terrible this person died.
And it's prone or
same as my, it's terrible that a 15-year-old boy dies over a phone number. But you have to look at all the circumstances to say, yes, it's right or it's wrong. You can't just go A, B, C, D.
No.
You can't just go, well, this is a policy. You can't just go, well, this is a law. You have to look at everything holistically and then draw your conclusion.
Yeah, you do. 100%. Well, Ian, it's coming up on 2 hours we've chatted for now, so I'm going to wrap it up.
I don't think we've actually covered any of your
no, we have
any of your questions really, but we've had a good chat anyway.
Yeah, no, it's been great. We've covered loads of things. So, what have you got planned for the rest of the day? Anything much?
Not a lot. I was going to probably end up microwaving my cup of tea that I was about to drink just before you phoned.
I have a habit of doing that.
That's probably the worst thing I should say on a podcast, because it's a real heathen thing to do, is to microwave a cup of tea. You just throw it away and start again.
No, don't waste it.
Ah, well.
Not in these unprecedented times. Well, Ian, it's been great having you on. I'm sure we'll chat again soon. And I'm going to take some of the things you've said and really implement them. And as soon as the Seals is ready for its second display, I'll get it over to you. All right, buddy.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. And maybe next time we can actually cover
more of the stuff,
a bit more of the actual subject matter that you wanted to.
Well, we've had a good chat about the restraint reduction network, and we've answered a lot of questions on that, so that's great. What I probably might do is get you back on to have a chat more about the specifics of the kit. But it's been good because our listeners are from such different, diverse places that there's enough in there that they'll pick up on bits of it. And if they're anything like me, they'll go, what does that mean? Or what's build? Or what's this? And they'll go and research it for themselves, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, and that's something I used to. Oh God, I hated it. Sort of in my time was because I was clinical and I'd come out with clinical terms and goodness knows what else, and within the sort of like the ivory tower that was when my office base was to a certain point. Everybody goes sort of like, what the hell are you talking about? But people used to come out with abbreviations, and I used to just sit there with my mouth open, because it was all sort of like business speak and HR speak and cross, and I didn't have a clue. And I had to say, I say, can you now say that in English, please?
Because you wouldn't go home to your wife, say, how you feeling, and say, I'm a bit clinically depressed. You'd be like, I'm not feeling very well, so why do we have to put a medical label on everything within the workplace?
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that was in the policy was about plain English.
Yes.
About using plain terms, not. It was a bit like, because if you get into the rhythm of using, we know this speak, so to speak, you start stereotyping, you start doing practice according to speak.
Yeah, that's right.
Rather than because it has to happen a certain way, or something happens and you have to adapt a certain way, you get stuck in this mindset, and that can drive bad practice as well.
I agree.
So plain speak, when you do an inquiry, the same as sort of nurses. Nurses used to hate it when I wrote on reports their name out in full.
Yeah.
Oh, you should put our initials. We shouldn't be identifiable. You are identifiable. You're a public servant, and anybody can put an blooming acquisition in for freedom of information request to find out your name. So what the hell's wrong with it being written there? You sign it at the end of your shift.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So, it used to wind me up something chronic, but that's a whole different game.
Well, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, buddy, and we'll keep in touch.
I will do. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Enjoyed it. Thanks. See you soon.